Breaking news and good news for fans of the Dallas Mavericks. Luka Doncic is good to go. He was slated as a game-time decision with that calf strain that's kept him out of the series so far. Of course, he suffered that in the final game of the season. After coming through 2 days of 5-on-5 scrimmages, though, without any setbacks, Doncic is in the lineup to face the Utah Jazz. Now, no word on if he'll start or come off the bench. He will be on a minutes restriction. That much we do know. With Jalen Brunson filling in so well in his absence, it's certainly a good problem for Jason Kidd to have. With Brunson playing well and Spencer Dinwiddie pitching in, Luka's absence hasn't been felt as much as it probably should be, and that is a good thing. Still, the Mavs with Luka are better than without him, though in this series, they are 2-1. For more on Luka's return, let's welcome in NBA writer Colin Ward-Henninger. We knew Friday, Colin, that it was trending this way, but give us your reaction to the news that he is indeed going to start playing in this series.
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously huge for the Mavericks. It was trending in this direction, but it's always, great news to hear that the progress that he was making has actually continued and gotten to the point that he is going to be able to play in this series. As you mentioned, the Mavericks haven't missed him a ton, which is really kind of indicative of how poor the Utah Jazz are playing right now. But what this does is not only are you getting Luka Doncic, of course, a guy who's averaged 34, 10, and 10 in his 2 playoff series in his career, but you're able to give Jalen Brunson and Spencer Dinwiddie a little bit of a breather. These are guys who are playing 40 minutes a game, who during the regular season were around the 30-minute mark. Guys like Reggie Bullock and Dorian Finney-Smith basically haven't sat out the whole series. So this gives Jason Kidd some options to get those guys some rest. And then, of course, you're bringing in Luka Doncic, who is probably one of the biggest problems that you can have as a defense in terms of the way that he operates this offense. And remember that the Mavericks are one of the best teams in basketball towards the end of the season when Doncic started to hit his stride. So this is great news for the Mavericks, not only for this series, but obviously moving forward in their goal of getting to the NBA Finals.
Given the emergence of Jalen Brunson, Colin, I mean, how do you manage things now if you're Jason Kidd? Are you expecting Doncic to start? Are you expecting Brunson to get the start and him to come off the bench?
It's an interesting question. And, I would have said that I would expect Doncic to start and then kind of manage his minutes from there. But, I'm out here in the Bay Area and I'm watching Steph Curry come off the bench for the Warriors as he gets his minutes limit ramped up, and he's been phenomenal. So I don't know if Doncic, it takes a certain kind of buy-in for a star to be able to come off the bench. My guess is that he would start and that they would kind of go from there because Spencer Dinwiddie, Jalen Brunson, these guys have experience coming off the bench, so that shouldn't be a problem for them. But either way, whether he starts or comes off the bench, in whatever minutes that he's given, he's going to be effective because you know that the Mavericks were not going to rush him back from this injury. This calf injury, this is a dangerous thing. We saw Kevin Durant just a couple seasons ago have a calf injury, come back and tear his Achilles. So you know that the Mavericks training staff was absolutely certain that Doncic is ready to go. So I expect him to be pretty effective whether he comes off the bench or whether he starts.
Some of those Mavericks player props were kept off the board until the Doncic news. Doncic at 24.5 points is his player prop going into this game. So what are your expectations in terms of his output, maybe minutes and points here?
Yeah, I think, usually your first game back around 25 minutes has been pretty general for guys coming off injuries like this. And if he does that, 24 points, it's not out of the question, but it seems a little high for me. Also because the rest of his teammates have been playing so well. I would imagine that Luka is going to be more in facilitator mode out there in his first game back, which he is obviously phenomenal at. But Luka Doncic loves those step back threes. And if he sees the first couple go down, he can get hot. And from there, if he's knocking those down, he's impossible to keep out of the lane. We've seen that this Utah defense is not good at stopping dribble penetration from guards. Luka's obviously not a quick guy who's going to blow by you, but he has a way of getting to his spots and getting to the rim. So I expect him to be highly effective. 24 points might be a bit much given his minutes restriction, but I think he's going to do well out there in his first game back.
Okay, so Colin leaning towards the under. In terms of the actual spread, it was 6 points as we entered the day, but it's dropped to 5.5 just with the news that Doncic was probable. That line may move a little bit more before we get to game time. So let's switch to the Jazz. I mean, how does it change things for the Jazz and their approach in this series?
Yeah, I mean, this was the game that the Jazz were supposed to make their adjustments, right? Brunson and Dinwiddie have been able to do basically whatever they wanted. The Utah guards have been terrible at containing dribble penetration. If Quinn Snyder was going to make any sort of adjustment to prevent that, now you have this complete wild card in Luka Doncic because he plays so much differently than anyone else. He plays at his own speed. Any sort of game plan that you have against him, he'll pick you apart. So I guess Quinn Snyder's real prayer is that Luka Doncic is just going to be really rusty and kind of disrupt the flow that the Mavericks have developed over the first few games of this series. So, I honestly, if I knew how to solve this, I would be an NBA coach. But I would expect that they are going to overload Doncic and make the other guys beat them. But as the Mavericks have proven, they're more than capable of doing that. So I think the Jazz are in real trouble, not only for this game, but for the rest of the series.
Yeah, and you have to think that maybe a game that they needed to win now becomes a game that they must win to stay in this series and avoid going down 3-1. So Doncic going to play. Does it change who you like in this game, Colin?
No, I was going to pick the Mavericks regardless. And now with Doncic back, like I said, giving extra rest to Brunson and Dinwiddie, guys who have played so well in this series. Honestly, I've been watching the Jazz. I saw them play against Golden State towards the end of the regular season. This is one of the games where they've been blowing these huge leads in the fourth quarter. There is something just not going on with that team. There's something off. Whether it's the chemistry, whether it's the game plan, it doesn't look like they trust each other. There's video of them screaming at each other on the sidelines during games, and I know teams do that, but when the Jazz are losing games that they should win, that stuff is just magnified. So I think the Mavericks have been playing so well. The fact that they were able to win a couple games without Doncic just gives them all the confidence in the world. I had them winning this game even before Doncic came back, and that certainly hasn't changed now that he's playing.
Our Tim Doyle that had that same sentiment earlier today on HQ. Something is up with the Jazz, but the Mavericks hitting things on all cylinders. Everybody's on the same page, says Jalen Brunson. CBS Sports NBA writer Colin Ward-Henninger joining us to talk about Luka Doncic in the lineup for the Mavericks today as they look to take firm control of the series with the Jazz. Thanks, Colin. Appreciate you hopping on with us. All right, in terms of Doncic in the playoffs, I mean, he's already the fifth most points through 13 career playoff games. You heard Colin mention it, his line 34, 10, and 10 in terms of what he's been able to do in playoff series. And Mavericks looking good as they head to Game 4, looking to take a 3-1 series lead on the Jazz. That game tipping off at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Luka Doncic will be ready to play.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.